Welcome to the Kickasserole. This episode starts off our new season all about branding. So it's going to be a wild ride. Buckle up. My name is Emily, and with me is my partner, Kassie. We own North of 8 Design and Marketing, just a small marketing agency in the middle of the woods in Wisconsin.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Hi. Yes, we do. We own things and we know things.
Yes, both of those are true.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of kick us off with just kind of an overview of what is a brand and why is it important.
So Emily, how would you explain to somebody new that doesn't know anything about branding, what is a brand?
Yes, so a brand is the sum of all elements, tangible and intangible. Tangible, like your color scheme, your logo, things like that. Intangible, like the way that you answer the phone. That all of these things contribute to how the public sees your business and interprets your brand. It's not who you think you are. I think that's a really important distinction that comes in the last couple of years, actually, with the onset of like social media and how businesses and brands are communicating directly with their customers now, and customers are communicating back. It's really how other people see your brand, how other people interpret all of these things that you're putting out there. So you might think, your brand is fun and quirky and, it's really great like ours. But out there are people who are like, these ladies are stupid.
Yeah, their dogs are snoring in the background.
You hear that? Lola.
But exactly, I mean, that's exactly right, is that it's like, yeah, you can think that you're one thing and then someone else may look at you and be like, they're a hot mess. So it's, your brand is determined by the way people see you. So you're getting judged all the time, essentially.
All the time. It's bad for your self-esteem. It could keep you up at night. But the important thing to know is you can always change your brand perception, right? So, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit later in this series about how research can inform a brand relaunch or a brand refresh, all of that. But this episode just really giving you kind of an overview of brands and why they're important. We all have our favorite brands. We are at North of 8, we're Apple nerds.
Yes.
Just comes with the territory.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of Apple, I think of Tim Apple.
Oh.
You remember that?
No.
Okay. Well, instead of oh man, what's his last name? Tim. The new CEO. Now I just think of him as Tim Apple. Well, instead of saying his name, this is not political. Trump said, had a good talk with Tim Apple the other day or something like that.
Oh, the CEO. That's funny. I didn't know that. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's really good. I probably have that whole story wrong, but
no, that's great.
Obviously the Macintosh Apple.
Yes.
That we've had for forever, that icon mark has never changed. I think of the brand story, right? Like I know that brand story. They started in a garage. I know more than I ever meant to know about that brand. But it just happens because I've become, and I think we at North of 8 have become sort of brand ambassadors for Apple. Kassie, what's a brand that you love?
I love Canon. So photography wise, when it comes, usually it goes between Canon and Nikon. You're either one or the other. And it's funny because both are great brands. Both are amazing brands, but everyone's usually one or the other. And so I am more of a Canon gal myself. It's one that I will, live with, die by, go with for the rest of my life. So yeah, that one is definitely, it makes a huge part.
So when you're looking at the Canon brand versus the Nikon brand, what are those differences?
The user functionality, I think it's just like, it makes more sense in my head. Like, obviously the cameras, they do the same exact thing. They do. Like, and at the end of the day, like, It's just user preference. I think that Canon is more user friendly. I think it was easier to learn and pick up when it came to switching settings. And then I just feel like there's a lot more growth too, that they release a lot of really cool things that, you know, they're constantly evolving, which I know Nikon is too, but I just through and through, it's my preference because I'm a loyalist. So
yeah. And did Canon ever tell you to think those things?
No.
Did they like run an ad campaign to you that was like, we are more user friendly than Nikon, and this is what?
I started with Nikon. I had a Nikon first, and then in college, which is the same too with PC. So PC versus Mac. So I went into college and I was like, I had a PC and a Nikon, and then everyone in my college used Apple for design purposes. So when I was doing all my classes, I had to learn how to use Apple products. And then all of our rental equipment for cameras were Canon. So consequently, my college made me into an Apple and Canon loyalist, but it just made sense. Like at the time, like it went from, you know, I never really understood either of the other two things that I came in with. I had them, I worked with them. I had no feelings really about either one. But then when I got into college, it was like, this is the brand we use and this is why, and it's great. You should use it too. And it's kind of how I am with Texas too. Like I'm a brand loyalist to Texas. Everybody knows it's kind of a cult, but like I live and die. Texas is in my blood. So
you can make that TikTok, that one that comes up that's like, what isn't a cult but seems like a cult? And it's just
somebody already did it, and it's Texas, and they did it, and I'm like, it's so true. I liked it last night. So like, it's you. Everybody has those things that they, you know, they live and die by. Unless like you're grocery shopping at Walmart, and then you get great value because it's cheap. So.
Okay, so and you probably, you know, as you're listening to this, hopefully you're thinking of some brands that you like really relate to, brands that you're very loyal to. I have probably, I mean, honestly, there's probably over a dozen. Like I'm only ever gonna get Jeeps. No matter what, I'm only ever gonna get Paula Deen cookware, which is a problem because she's not a nice lady. But all of these things, you know, Paula Deen doesn't really fit into this. Forget about her, except the butter part. Put butter in everything; it tastes better. But this conversation here, none of these brands ever told us the way that we need to feel about their brands, right? Apple never said we're cooler and hipper than. Well, no, they did in those commercials for a little while. But that was after their customer had already determined that this was their brand.
They just ran with it at that point.
Yes. Yeah. The one with the guy from Dodgeball.
Oh my gosh.
Remember those?
Yes.
Apple versus PC. So anyway, we're talking about big brands, right? But in this podcast, we're reaching hopefully small businesses. That's our goal. So why is a brand important for a small business? That's a great question, Emily.
Because you want, I mean, even in your community, you're going to be recognized and you want to have consistency. And one thing that like personally like drives me absolutely insane and it makes me want to just like light everything on fire is when I see a brand's logo used incorrectly, or when somebody else modifies somebody's logo and like maybe even like they don't size it right so the dimensions are off and it's like squished, or like whenever I see a logo bastardized, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for, because it takes away from that like cohesive full circle brand of like, hey, like this is who we are, don't mess with us, like don't mess with this. And same for within the company, if they use something, like really owning who you are so that other people, no matter where you're at, they'll recognize you. I mean, even though we're in a small community, I can tell you, like if I see a logo, I can say right off the bat who it is, like with most of the people that are in our towns, like if they have good branding. However, if there's, you know, somebody that we don't recognize, and it's like there's no recognition to it. So
yeah, and it's a good brand is all about creating a cohesive experience no matter how somebody approaches your business or your brand, right? So whether they go to your website or they find you on social media, or you know, they come in and they, you know, they talk to the front desk person, or they call, or they email, that experience it just has to be cohesive, because a disjointed brand reflects really poorly on almost every aspect of your business. If you can't even have a concise communication style and just all over the board, I'm going to, well, I am consciously, but most people subconsciously will assign those same traits, that disjointedness, the, not kind of having your together.
Yep.
They'll put that on, your services. If your posts are like on Facebook are just like the things that come up, the templates on Canva, and every one of them is different, I don't have a good sense of your business. I just don't. Yeah.
And same for like if your brand, so like say your brand is a manly cigar company that like, you really are tough and Western and all of these things, but then your social media reflects that like there's definitely a woman running this page because it's like exclamation points and emojis and all of these things. Like that doesn't help your experience. You want people to think I'm this cool, rough, tough cowboy, cigar smoking, whiskey drinking fool, but then you've got, something that it doesn't bring it together at all. So to me, that just shows like I don't know, a wall.
Yeah. Yep. And just a lack of thoughtfulness too. So brands are important regardless of the size of your business, regardless of, the area that you serve. And so often actually in small towns, the opportunity is so huge because if you have an awesome brand, right, and you're living it every day, chances still are your competitor doesn't. So it's a really big opportunity, especially for our small towns. Yeah, and then the other thing that it really helps, and I just made myself a note here so I didn't forget, but it also helps with your internal team as well. So it gets all of your staff on the same page, right? This is who we are. We'll talk about brand guides later, but all of the work that will culminate into a brand guide, which is like a living and breathing document, all about who your brand is, who your business is. And you can get all of your staff rallied around that brand guide, then that just helps with that cohesive experience. It doesn't mean that, each of your staff members can't have a personality or anything like that, and we're all just like robots, but it really does help.
Yeah. Emily is so dedicated to our brand that she even painted her house the same colors as our recent rebrand. So you see the green there and the blue, like you actually truly reflect our North of 8 brand in your house. So brand loyalist.
The dogs go on the couches, so they always have to be covered in blankets. So
But
it always looks like a frat house in here.
Love it. But that's true. Like even so say you do have employees that jump on your social media or they're like, and they make it obvious like, hey, this is Ted from, whatever business. And it's like, then Ted has a personality. And then Ted becomes part of the brand. Like that's something that you can totally incorporate. Don't feel like you have to stick to just like one very, monotone voice. If you have characters that you're promoting, like if you have different employees that are jumping on and they're like, make sure that they're distinguished from one another so that, Ted's one way and, Kevin's another and so on and so forth. But yeah.
So yes. So brands are important. It's not just your logo. In fact, while that might be like the most important visual element, it is so far secondary to those intangibles. It's the, how quickly do we get back to people? How how do we answer the phone? Because that logo will become recognizable once they've already created that relationship with you.
Absolutely. It's like Chick-fil-A. Whenever you order something and you say thank you, they have to say my pleasure. And like that's something that I'll always think about. Like I'd say thank you. And when they say my pleasure, that's part of their brand.
Or the Arby's bell.
Yeah.
Yep. They've just going to so much fast food.
I love it.
2021, I've already ruined that resolution. Okay, so in this series then we will talk about visual branding, we'll talk about communication style, we'll talk about all the research that goes into it, we'll talk about mood boards and brand guides. It's going to be the most fun journey of your entire life.
That's an understatement, actually.
It is, 100%. Okay, well, so, okay, that's all I have then.
Yeah. So what's the one thing to start off with? So what's our one thing that we want people to start thinking about?
Ooh, you know what? So our next episode is going to be all about defining who your customer is and who you want your customer to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to jump ahead and I'm going to say your one thing to think about until the next podcast drops. Oh my gosh, I feel like a rapper. Until our next podcast is out, is who's your customer?
Mm-hmm.
Who is it right now? And do you want it to change?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like, not like Jerry, the farmer, like I don't,
Yeah.
but like generalization. This is when it's okay to make generalizations.
Yes. Yep. Who's your ideal customer? Because the way you're going right now, the path you're on, is not necessarily the path you have to stay on. And if you have a bunch of these customers that aren't actually, satisfying what you're trying to do, then change it. What is your ideal customer? What does that look like? And how then you start to figure out, how do we get there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Last thing.
Yes.
This is a hot mess. We actually, at North of 8, that reminded me, Cassie, we went through a rebranding process this year.
I was going to talk about it, but I'm glad. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was brutal.
It was really difficult. Our North of 8 brand was, like when you are a construction contractor or whatever, and like you build beautiful houses and then you go to your own shanty shack, and even though you could fix it up, like you're just so tired of it, so you just like, you don't do any work on your own house. We hadn't been doing much work on our house, on our branding house. And so post COVID, we made sure, not post, we're still in COVID.
Right.
Post mid COVID, we decided that it was time to, a little self-care for our North of 8 brand. And it was so hard. We didn't do it, like Cassie and I didn't do it. We had somebody else come and sit with us, and we did a lot of the brainstorming, but the actual like visual stuff. And it was so hard to see because it was so different than what we were used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we talk about like rebranding and things like that, know that we totally understand how hard it is to have somebody say like, oh, what you're doing isn't serving you.
Yeah. And what's really cool about that too is the lady that did that kicked off the visual rebrand is actually our branding expert. So like, she's the one that like, she did branding for most of her career. And so it was really neat having her come in and just really like refocus our brand. Emily and I did sit down for like 4 hours and we just spitballed different words that were like, okay, what does our brand want to be? And we're like, all of these words, like adjectives, and we gave it to her and we're like, can you make a brand out of this? And it was amazing. And so now we've experienced what we offer people. And it was painful. And it was, I think it does take having an external look at it. I think doing your own rebrand is very hard because you are tightly, you are very close with the brand you've created as a business owner, as a manager that's been there for however many years. Like, you love your brand, but that doesn't mean that everybody else does. And so to have somebody else look at it and be like, hey, here's what I suggest. It's like, it sucks, but at the same time, like looking back, like looking at it now where we are today, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. I don't know, like, I'm so glad we did this because it is truly who we are. So yeah.
Yep. And I think we went from, when this business started, it was just me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was no longer just one person and a few subcontractors. Now it's like we had to put our big girl pants on.
Yeah.
And it was very uncomfortable, but
it's very uncomfortable.
But it worked out. So
and so there's hope. If you feel like stuck in your brand, there is definitely hope to change it.
All right. Okay, my dear.
Yes.
That's what I got to say. One thing, start thinking about who your customer is and who you want your ideal customer to be.
Yeah, sounds good. And if you want to ask us any questions about that, feel free to reach out to us on social media or reach out on the website. You can find a way to comment on this wherever you're at. I know it's in a bunch of different places, so we'll see. And then
we're on Spotify now.
Yeah, we are on Spotify. We are on Anchor. We are on a bunch of different places. So you can find us in many realms.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.